Today we're here on site at Mercer Wines. We're going to have a chat to Aaron Mercer and learn more about their wines, sustainability, and Hunter Valley. I'm Jason.
And I'm Trent, and we're here on an unfiltered, unapologetically unprofessional wine journey. And we're saying here, Jace.
Our saying here is drink more, try more, learn more, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. We've got a taste of your hospitality already, and it is amazing. I've got a feeling that that's what resonates with Hunter Valley.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might mean the three children sort of overtaking the whole of the setup here, but yeah, look, the Hunter's great. Hunter's a great place to grow up as a winemaker, I guess, as well. Camaraderie is amazing.
Yeah,
mostly we're all pretty good mates.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a great community vibe. And we want to dive into that. We want to dive into your wine journey. We want to dive into Mercer Wines. But before we do that, we like to start off with the wind-up icebreaker question. So I might hand over to Trent.
Great cap, by the way, Jace.
You like that? It's Mercer Wines. Yes.
Okay. The icebreaker question. First one, most memorable wine. It could be a moment or it could be the wine.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've got to say I cheated a little bit. I saw some of it. I thought maybe it was the same questions, but I find this a difficult one. I mean, having been in the wine game for a long time and the generosity of others, I've tasted some amazing wines. So for me, it's probably the wine experience or moment, and that is, traveling through Europe, sitting down with a carafe of wine, overlooking some great landscape when the cheese cart pours out at the end of it. So for me, it's more just the countryside, the areas that wine is associated with, rather than the great wine.
Is it the area they go, this is paradise?
Oh yeah, and for me, that's probably the south of France or somewhere like that. I've travelled through Burgundy, Bordeaux, the Rhone Valley, etc., and that's wonderful, beautiful parts of the world. But right down in the where it's made and the people sort of live and breathe agriculture and so forth, amazing parts of the world. So
it's a close second to Hunter Valley, though, right?
It's close. It's close second. I think my wife would struggle to agree with you there, but anyway.
Okay, next one is the one that you still would want to taste, but you haven't had a chance to yet.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, I've probably answered the first one a little bit more seriously, and wines like still a great wine for me is the 01 Akim as an example.
Wow.
And I sit and I think about those great wines, and I have been really fortunate to taste some of these great wines of the world. My problem now is that I'm very much priced out of the game. So the great wines I want to drink today are just the same wines, just the new vintages of, Akim, the first growths, the DRCs, etc. They're probably the wines that, the current vintages of those great wines, which are, it's a rich person's game these days.
I feel that's been a common theme though, right? The great wines and see what's so great about them. Obviously you had a chance to try the Akim, but we still want to try.
That Akim story, it was really cool. I mean, I remember it was a wine dinner. It was at Muse Kitchen down here.
Oh yeah.
Chris Tyrrell had put it together, and we had a Coche and Bonneau de Martre, so some really great whites, some great red Burgundies as well, and we end up on an Akim, and it smoked the entire night, and you're like, why was it good? Because it just stood head and shoulders against great wines, and I thought that was exceptional. So wines like that, I want to try them again, but I want the 2014 version or the whatever, which are largely unattainable now.
Cool. Next question. I've thrown in a new one.
All right.
Is there a person who'd love to have a bottle of wine with, like anyone in the world?
It's a really tough one. I mean, it's that question, who would you love to have dinner with?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Winston Churchill.
It could be a winemaker, it could be a celebrity.
I've already been trained to say my wife, because if I don't say that, I'll be in trouble. But
I actually think
I'll open up. Could be past or present.
Yeah. Look, it'd have to be a real icon of the Hunter Valley, Maurice O'Shea, who passed away many, many years ago. But I've been fortunate enough to taste a couple of those wines. Probably culminated in the 50s, his winemaking, but started in the 20s, and really revolutionised Australian wine. Up there on the hill, which Mount Pleasant. So I'll say that Maurice O'Shea, just to open a great bottle of Hunter wine and go, how the hell did you do that? I think.
Okay, next one. You're a Hunter Valley boy, but what's your favourite grape varietal?
So favourite grape varietal, white would be Chardonnay, red would be Shiraz, and the reason is probably the same, is that the diversity of wine styles that can be made, the regions that it's grown in globally. So if I had to drink one variety forever, well, I've got infinite choices, haven't I? Because it's Chardonnay's made in so many different ways.
Yeah, sounds good. Next one for us, when we think about wine, we think about food. Has there been a food and wine pairing that you've come across that has been quite interesting?
No, look, I actually probably don't subscribe to the whole food and wine.
Oh, really?
Look, the classics are there for a reason, right? You know, oysters and champagne, caviar and champagne, all of those. But I think I probably, some years ago, you know, I used to go out with my wife and we'd go out for dinner and we'd choose we'd sit there and you'd either choose food you didn't want to eat or wine you didn't want to drink because you're trying to fit both. So now we order what we want.
Yeah.
And for food, and we have a great bottle of wine. And I've got to say, I drink a fair bit more than my wife, you know. So it's got to be a wine that I probably want to drink because I'm going to finish 2/3 of the bottle. So, and I actually got to say, we probably drink a lot of glasses these days when we're dining. Just so I feel that's how Aussies drink a lot. So you want to sort of see that bistro drinking, and you just get to taste so many different wines, so much more diverse, and hopefully they're Australian. I've got to say, but
Well, we were talking about before how, like, in general, kind of alcohol consumption seems to be dropping a bit in wines, and how for me, going to a restaurant, I feel like I want that choice. Like, I don't want to order that full bottle of wine that I feel like
I have to finish it all.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, as I've aged, just don't wake up as good the next day and all the rest of it. So.
Okay. Last one. Piece of advice for amateurs, such as ourselves, going to the world of wine.
So what jumped in my head then is when you said your little saying, you know...
drink more, try more, learn more.
Yeah. I remember, so down at Blackslands Inn down on Broke Road here, many, many years ago, I would have been like 20, 21 years of age, and I was at a Scarborough Christmas party, and Len Evans was there, as you may know Len Evans, and he, you know, merrily Scarborough said to him, "Oh, Aaron's getting into wine. He's, you know, and have you got any advice for him?" And I remember Len leaning on me and he said, "Read as much as you can, drink as much as you can, never be afraid to have an opinion." And I've always sort of thought of this in my career and used it, and it's almost what you guys are saying. So I thought, you know, it's great. And, I mean, the other thing is just be humble, and most people are good people, right? And you find that as you go around
definitely
wineries, and so it's just read and drink and work hard and all the rest of it. All the simple stuff, cliche stuff.
Every single person that we've met, whether it's the winemaker or anyone working in the winery or the cellar door, absolutely humble and just gracious, really friendly people, which is not the perception that we've seen coming into this podcast, but it's really taught us a lot. Open up the eyes.
Wine's not a snobby game once you get inside of it. And I think we spoke earlier about some of the challenges to the wine sector, and I largely think that's because we put up this bravado of snobbery. In fact, we're just a bloody drink it, you know, get into it and enjoy it amongst all the other beverages that are out there. So
awesome.
That's the questions.
So that's the extended version. Aaron, you're first to get all of those.
Well, I'll extend it because I can talk too. So.
Well done. We might jump into the heart of the interview and really getting to understand your wine journey at the start of it. When I read about Mercer Wines, I hear a lot about local heroes. And so keen to understand, how did it all start for you, your wine journey, and how did these local heroes play a role in that journey?
Yeah, for me, I was not from a wine family. I grew up in Cessnock, the town adjacent to Hunter Valley, or the heart of the Hunter Valley. My dad was a coal miner, my family were, you know, so I guess I finished school with this idea that I'd end up in coal mines. I didn't know there was anything else around here, you know, largely. And I took a cellar door job probably a week after I was, and back then you used to open a newspaper, and you used to find an ad in a newspaper, and you pick a phone up off the wall, like, you know, and I called, and merrily Scarborough, Scarborough Wines was, you know, I went to do an interview with her, and fast forward, you know, I was with that company, so I finished my degree, I was working cellar door, I'm a reasonably big guy, I can drive a tractor, I can pull hoses, I can do all of that, and a small family business like that, you just wear all hats, right? So I accidentally fell into wine, and you know, just a great person, great company, right time, great people. The Scarboroughs are still a really major part of our life. In fact, they are our landlords in the new cellar door that we're moving into. So, you know, it's a great relationship that's lasted the years. No doubt I wouldn't be in wine if it wasn't for Ian Scarborough, for sure. Really great mentor through those years, and still today as we battle the business questions and whatever. But yeah, so look, this is probably not a chronological way of going through it. But so, the Scarboroughs, I've worked for other great Hunter Valley companies, the Tyrrells family and Brokenwood. They're not a family company, but it's very much one of the motherships of the Hunter Valley and Australian wine industry. We have also been fortunate enough to live across the world with wine. So I've done vintages in Germany and Canada. We lived in France for about 15 months or something like that, working in the south of France, and then the US for 3 years. And each one of those was a stepping stone. What a great career that you can sort of shift around the world and you can actually step up the ladder as you do it. So that's been my career. Back here in Australia, I took a role with Semillon, which are a significant organic player in Australian wine. So I've had some really great roles, but basically all back here in the Hunter. So always ended up back here in the Hunter, I guess.
And what was the driver for staying in the Hunter? Because you've gone around the world.
Yeah.
Had many vintages elsewhere, and then you said, "Look, I want to come back home." Effectively,
it's a good question. We really enjoyed the US, and I could really see a career path that went somewhere over there. I think those senior roles were relatively easy to get. They were very financially attractive. So we had our first child when we lived in the US, and my mother died when we lived in the US, and you're sort of sitting over in the States. You've got all your family back here, and you just go, what are we doing here? Really, what are we doing here? So for us, it was a really big family move to come back to the Hunter, and it's been the greatest thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you guys have got a bunch of kids running around here earlier. Nothing else really matters. It's you want the family to be right, and we knew we could build a good career in business and all the rest of it here. So that's why the Hunter. Plus, it's a bloody good place. The camaraderie is fantastic around here. So.
Do you still have that itch though?
It's funny. COVID sort of knocked that out a little bit. You couldn't travel, so you lose it. Otherwise, we were always, trying to travel every year. I think since when we came back from the States, but I haven't travelled since 2019.
So, where's your first trip then?
It is China.
Yeah,
which is probably wouldn't have been my first tourism choice, but it's where we're going.
Yeah,
just to see the big bad world of Chinese wine.
Sounds good.
Well, to me, Hunter Valley, it's really interesting. Born and raised in Sydney, I've probably been to Hunter 3 times. 2 of those times I don't remember because I was on a tour bus drinking way too much wine, and that was about it. The third time I was watching an Alicia Keys concert, but really didn't get to appreciate the wine region itself. For you, who's born here and seen elsewhere and then come back, what makes Hunter Valley, the wine region, unique in comparison to other wine regions? Yeah,
look, the Hunters, we are sitting right now in the oldest wine region in the country. We have, just up the driveway outside of us, our vines planted in, the 1870-ish, incredibly old vineyards here. Now, I think I might just sit sideways and say that I don't necessarily agree that vine age is everything in a great bottle of wine. Take regions like the Yarra Valley, for example, which don't have vine age, but there's history. There's been a heavy concentration of great wineries and great winemakers grow up in this area. So there's this amazing skill set in the Hunter Valley, which is you don't see in many places across Australia. The Hunter is also largely the wine tourist front of Australia. You've got Sydney, you've got 5 million people a couple of hours away, and you come here for Alicia Keys or the Rolling Stones or for Elton John. It's a bloody good place to sell wine if you want to set up a wine business. Not only does it make great wines, but back to the wines, we make this grape variety called Semillon, which you may have heard of. And the Hunter Valley makes the best Semillon in the world without discussion over. I like, I'm happy to have discussion on many topics, but that's the best Semillon in the world. And companies like Tyrrells, Brokenwood, Tomo, et cetera, make fantastic examples of those wines. And I think that's unique. You have that on your doorstep. If you're a Sydney sider at least, and you should get up here. You should get up here more often. I'm not even sure if I answered your question, but I certainly talked around it.
Definitely the characteristics. I do want to dig into a bit more around why Semillon is great here, but the trend looks like you got another.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've travelled all around the world, different wine regions. How does Hunter actually rate amongst those? Like, I feel that it's, even in Australia, it feels it's not as well recognised compared to Barossa or the Yarra, or even like McLaren Val?
I think that's fair. I think the Hunter, it's always hard being the first.
Yeah.
I think you can lose your shine. I think maybe the Hunter hasn't been as concise about its narrative in the market. Certainly, export markets have preferenced Barossa and so forth, which has popularised that region. But now they're facing excess grapes and so on down there. The Hunter is a small region; it will never compete in mass market. Everything we do is premium. So I think you're right. I think largely the Hunter is probably overlooked for other regions, but we still look at, if you want to reference wine show results or Halliday ratings, Halliday 5-star ratings or whatever, the Hunter is still punching well outside of its weight division. With, I'm going to make this up because I don't know this is true, but proportionately those wineries in the Hunter, we would take up percentage of grapevines in the ground, or however you measure that, the Hunter would be in that top echelon, absolutely up there with Yarra and Margaret River easily. But that is, of course, the top echelon of wines. And then below that, of course, we've just got delicious wines to drink.
It feels that the quality's up there, but then maybe the marketing to support it's maybe not right.
Let's talk to the HVW. So, in fact, Chris Tyrrell's the president of our HVW. No, they are doing a great job. They do a really great job. So I should be careful.
I read an interesting fact from the book that you gave me, Jancis Robinson, and the World Atlas of Wine. Hunter Valley produces only 1% of all of the grapes in Australia.
So when you put it in that context, we've got a hell of a loud voice. We've got a really loud voice for 1%.
Yeah.
So I actually think maybe they are doing a good job. Now, history is on the side. But, Jancis also says in that wonderful book that, the Australia's great gift to the wine world is Hunter Valley Semillon, and she's certainly a voice that we all look to for the be all end all of wine. I think she's a fantastic writer. So.
Definitely,
yeah. Well,
let's talk Semillon.
Let's talk Semillon because you were touching on that, and we did a segment on Semillon, and I was reading up about it. And there's something about the sand in Hunter Valley that makes it special. Are you able to explain that? Why is Hunter Valley Semillon, why is it from this region? What's made it so special? How does it grow in that way to provide that taste and that texture?
Yeah, so I'm going to have my crack, who's a person who doesn't specialise in Semillon. And I know you're going to talk to a couple of people who do specialise in Semillon, but in my opinion, there's two, let's call them Grand Cru sites here in the Hunter Valley. One of those is adjacent to Oakey Creek Road, the old Drayton's Flats, which is mostly sort of broken up these days. Broken would own the choice parcel of that, and Tomo is bottled under that, called OC. A beautiful section of sandy soil which flows through into the old Lovedale, Mount Pleasant's Lovedale site. So gorgeous sandy soils there. And then the other piece is the Tyrrells piece, which runs from just south of Broke Road right through to Upper Hermitage Road into Braymore, which is owned by Tomo, Casuarina, etc. There, they are two, in my opinion, vastly different sites for Semillon, but low down on those sandy flats, really well draining. And I mean, when I say sand, we're not talking beach sand. We're talking almost talc powder, this grey sand that you pick up and it'll just fly out of your hands, just blow away, but very, very well draining. Semillon in the Hunter has a beautiful ability of getting ripe. So ripeness, sugar's a part of that, but phenological ripeness, so flavours, ripening, and tannins. Tannins are in white wines as well, so those tannins or et cetera are maturing in time. So we get rid of those green characters, for example, those Sauvignon Blanc-esque characters. They leave maybe, let's call it at 10 Beaume or potential of 10% alcohol, and then we start to accumulate sugar ripeness, flavour ripeness, after that. So we're able to pick these wines bright and fresh, high natural acidity, fully flavoured, where other regions, in order to get that flavour spectrum, would need to be picking at much higher alcohols. And then you end up with wines that are rich and flabby and so forth. And largely the longevity of Hunter Valley Semillon is related to that acidity and that lower alcohol and just immense flavour. So unique beast. And mostly I'm talking about that upper echelon of Semillon as well, the VAT ones and the ILRs and so on. But Semillon is equally just a bloody good drink that if you're making it in that a more everyday style. It really challenges those Rieslings out of Clare and Eden. It's got beautiful aromatics, young, and you should just crack it and drink it around the pool. You know, so that's the beauty of Semillon, flexibility, albeit in a pretty narrow band. But there we go. I hope that's good enough.
I think it's good. You kind of compared it to Riesling. I feel like Riesling kind of went through this kind of cool phase that a lot of people started drinking it. I feel that Semillon's, it's there, but it's not as cool yet.
So it is interesting. We've got a few wines in front of us, which is our core range, that colourful label, but we've got a Semillon in this range and it sells really, really well.
Yeah.
We just, it's fairly localised.
Yeah.
Would be, sort of Sydney does okay, but north of the bridge and up through the Central Coast and Newcastle, they love Semillon. They love Verdelho. They love these sort of regionally traditional varieties. Go to Adelaide and try to sell a bottle of Hunter Valley Semillon, you might struggle.
Yeah, but internationally though, right?
Internationally, absolutely. Go again. It's that upper piece of our wines, those single vineyard sites, etc. Not Mercer, but other producers. And but go to the great restaurants in New York, and Paris, and yes, Paris and London. I mean, you're seeing them. And I'd argue that when we look for wine trends around the world or sort of greatness, we're not. You can go to Sydney and Melbourne, and I don't want to take away from the Soms because they're a major part of our business. But that's not where you go to find the wine trends of the world. You go to Paris, London, New York. You look at those, that they are the icons of the restaurant world globally. So when they're showcasing, and you have a look these days and try to buy a bottle of Chablis for any reasonable amount, but you can put a bottle of that one on that list with 5 years of age, and it's incredibly delicious. And many of these people, these international Soms, have trained in Sydney and Melbourne or worked over here for periods of time, so have been exposed to these great wines.
We always talk about Hunter Semillon, but how come we don't talk about Hunter Shiraz or Hunter Chardonnay?
Which are possibly better. I've said Chardonnay and Shiraz are my, and I think most companies around here would sell far more Chardonnay and Shiraz than they would Semillon, but we all talk about Semillon. Great question. I love both varieties, and we have some of the best and oldest and most unique and diverse styles of Shiraz in particular here in the Hunter, and I think it's vastly different from the Vale or from Barossa. And I'm not saying better or in any way, but I think that should be celebrated. The diversity and difference between those wines, because they're of equal quality. That's for sure. So, and of equal quality to those great wines of the Rhone Valley. Which are tremendously expensive.
The one thing that kind of popped into my head when we kind of talked about Hunter Valley, I always think I see Hunter Valley as just purely, it has Hunter Valley there or Tyrrell's Semillon. But it didn't have those kind of sub areas or sub regions that some of the other areas within Australia or across the world definitely have. Is that kind of create that more of that kind of personality around different areas of Hunter?
I think that is interesting. I think companies tend to take that on themselves. I mean, we keep talking about Tyrrell's here, and Brokenwood, another example, who all talk about, Tyrrell's might talk about HVD or Stevens or whatever, and I think that's fantastic. And, if we were in Burgundy, we wouldn't be talking about Chardonnay. We'd be just talking about
Lovedale Chardonnay.
Exactly. That's what you'd be talking about. And we probably regionally don't do a great job of that, but I think the producers that focus on that do a good job. And in fact, in our brand, at our top tier, we need to do a better job. Absolutely. I think, when I look at the future of Aussie wine, for example, we sort of talk about, I think single vineyard is going to be a real part of that. We've already talked about drinking less wine, but we certainly aren't talking about, I'm not talking about spending less money. I'm just talking about drinking better. And be more decisive about those and share bottles or whatever it is, So single vineyard will be part of the future narrative for sure.
We've talked about Hunter. We've talked about Shiraz, Chardonnay, Semillon, the varietals that are here. Let's focus on Mercer Wines. And I read this statement. Mercer Wines is fruit-driven, delicately balanced, and reliably gluggable. And I love that. I love the gluggable portion of it. It kind of makes it more relatable, something you want to enjoy. For you, are you able to explain what makes Mercer Wines special and unique in comparison to the other wineries around there?
Yeah, I guess we do take a gluggable approach, and I'm not sure if we wrote that or if somebody else did, but it doesn't particularly matter. We took a I might step back so I can get to that. We focus heavily on alternate varieties in our brand. We did that. I sort of have this nagging in the back of my head that we just need to do a better job sustainably, et cetera. And we asked that question, well, what grapes are in the ground 20 or 30 years from now? I mean, these are all sustainably certified. A couple of these are organically certified that we're going to taste today. But that's the start line. What grapes are in the ground? What are we going to be growing? And then we step into the area of alternate varieties, right? And so then, now I'm getting to your question, is we then say, okay, well, people don't know what these grapes taste like. So we want to show what the region and what the grape tastes like. So largely we're making these with the influence of oak. We're sitting with barrels behind us. We use barrels. That's winemaking. But we're not trying to flex our winemaking muscle here. We're just trying to show you what bloody delicious Montepulciano tastes like, as an example. We also, I think we've largely, I want to say lost our way in wine, but I said it. And we've focused too much on that bit of dirt, and we don't think as much about when and where we drink a glass of wine. So we want to go down the path of, well, here's a delicious glass of wine that you should enjoy with dinner or at the beach or whatever. So that's how we approach that sort of gluggable idea. But, that said, all of the wines in front of you have won gold medals and trophies, those 4 wines. Yeah. We are highly awarded winery last year. New South Wales Small Winemakers Show, we were the most successful exhibitor. So quality is absolutely foremost for us as a brand. However, we want to just make bloody good drinks that people want to. For me, it's working with those venues or something where somebody comes in, has a glass of wine. I want them to drink 2 glasses of wine. Yeah. I want the venue to benefit from that and us. I want people to enjoy what we're doing. Anyway.
I'm going to probably ask it a different way as well.
Yep.
So if you had a blind tasting with your Mercer wines there, how would you know it's a Mercer wine?
Yeah, I've got to say that's probably easier with the reds. I think if we taste 2 reds, but you're welcome to take others anyway. But our wines are just lovely. They have a lovely vibrancy, beautiful colour to the edge. I think that's really important in any wine, but really striking with colour. They are just so intensely flavoured, gluggable, I'm using your words, but just really, really lovely, polished, plush fruits without the excesses of oak and so forth, albeit they've been in barrel for a period of time. So I think, interestingly, if I've ever judged a wine show or friends of mine who judged wine shows, and I judge quite a bit. It's interesting. They'll say, "I think I found one of your wines in that." And it's a funny thing, that whole game is you need to get all of that out of your head. Yeah. So we as winemakers, if we're tasting, for example, if I taste Tyrrells or my wines or Tomos as examples or Brokenwood, we could largely pick whose wine's who, and there's a
signature.
Yeah, I think so. And I actually think it's quite accidental. It's just what we do. It's how we make wine. But we tend to be these really vibrant, fruit-forward, lovely plush styles of wine.
Okay.
Well, as you were talking earlier about what makes Mercer wines special and unique, the emerging varietals, when I was looking at your range, was also exciting me, because a lot of the ones, and some of them we're going to have today, I've never tasted before. And I think you mentioned one on our episodes, the Picpoul, which is probably the first that we're going to taste. I think what we do is let's have a tasting of it, and we'll ask more questions as we go across.
Yeah. So tell us about the Picpoul first.
So Picpoul Blanc is a grape variety from the south of France, originally from the Rhone Valley, and it's actually one of the allowable varietals in Chardonnay de Pape. Some white varieties are allowed in that, but has made its home in a region. It got its own appellation 20 odd years ago, I think, called Picpoul de Pinay. There are a couple of plantings in Australia. Coriol has some. There are some others in McLaren Vale. But there is one planting in New South Wales. This is planted by the O'Day family out in the Central Ranges, so out between sort of Cowra and Orange. And it is, so we make it in this sort of nod to how it is made in Picpoul de Pinay. Now, for me, I love a grape variety that comes with its own marketing campaign, which Picpoul's one of those. It is famed as being the world's best oyster wine, which for me in this range, I love Hunter Valley Semillon, believe it or not. This to me is very much in that mould. A lovely zippy acid, freshness, vibrancy. Certainly bottled this almost a year ago, and the 2024 of this bottle's, I can show you in tank if you want to see it, but when do we bottle it? In June, so just a month away, I guess, month or 6 weeks. We want to keep it lovely and vibrant. That's the point of this wine style. Now, we're not without our sort of commercial hat on either, as that's the charter of business, But this is also, the last couple of years, has been the fastest growing grape variety on premise in the UK, in London. And again, we look to those areas to say where the trends are coming. So Picpoul's, it's just delicious, really delicious.
How do you do all these kind of alternative varieties? You get these from growers.
Yeah.
Like, how do you pick them? Because it seems like there's just so much out there. Like, is it kind of trial and error to kind of say, hey, I want to try a bit of Montepulciano or Nero d'Avola or Picpoul?
I guess there's plenty going on behind the scenes. There's this, which is wonderful in a way of breaking stuff down for customers, what we do in our cellar door, but there's a hell of a lot of politics going on in the wine industry and trying to charter our own path forward. And much of that is related to, well, what grapes are going to be in the ground and where are the trends. And it's a tough industry where you've got to commit to something, put a grape in the ground, wait, and then try to build a market for it. So this Picpoul was brought over. Slightly different story with that one. It was brought over by a guy who owns oyster leases down on the south coast, and tried it when he was in France, when he was over doing a bit of research, and then sort of navigated his way through quarantine, etc. with this. It took him quite a long time, and then went into partnership with a family out there in Central Ranges, and largely controlled by those guys now. It's a few wineries making off that site. But if we talk about something like Montepulciano, which we'll get to, so jumping around slightly. I mean, both the Picpoul and the Monty are off a property. This guy I've been working with for 15 years, I first met him when I was working with Brokenwood, probably. And so he's, these people become your friends.
Yeah.
And so I've encouraged him, I guess, over the years to put different things in the ground. They're very progressive. They're very early in adopting organics, 25 years ago, I guess. So they go to all this trouble and all this financial investment. I actually see it as our job as wine producers to then go and forge a path for it and to make a home out there for it, whether that be in our cellar door or on premise. Our brand is largely focused on the Sydney market and on premise in Sydney, and we have a great distributor there. It's a wonderful job for us. And then the other part of that is sales through our cellar door, and in both of those spots, we can just tell that story over and over and over. So a hell of a lot of investment out there going on in the background related to these grape varieties.
Is that on your guidance to say, hey, I see Picpoul coming through, why didn't you try growing this varietal?
Probably not for these varieties, but yes, that has been.
Yeah.
And everyone, I mean, if I could read the tea leaves, I'd own an island somewhere, right? So I think it's all just dartboard stuff anyway. But you've got to work towards something, right? So so yes, some of that, and then which is good when you've got buy-in, the grower likes that, because you feel obliged to then find a home commercially for those grapes.
Is also part of it through your journeys in southern France as well. I remember that Picpoul. I loved that stuff.
Yeah. And also, I mean, yes, we lived in France, but we travelled extensively through Italy as well. Yeah. And Italian varieties tend to be where, I know Picpoul's a French variety, but if you look at the diversity of our brand, Nero d'Avola, we've got Sagrantino coming, we've got Barbera. I think there's no point making, France 2.0, however you say that. We've got to explore these other grape varieties as a country, and our country is hot and dry.
Yeah.
And there's other parts of the world that are hot and dry and have indigenous grape varieties. That could be Greece. We've just got to make those sound commercially. Yeah. There's probably some fantastic grape varieties, but we all can say Montepulciano if we want to.
Yeah.
So, I think absolutely that influences how we think.
Yeah.
I think ultimately for the Australian consumer, it's fantastic. I mean, for me, a year ago, I'd never heard of any of these varietals. And so it's kind of just tweaked my mind and gone, hold on, we're missing out on so much more to try. And bringing these emerging varietals in gives the opportunity for us in Sydney and Australia to try it.
Yeah, look, if I compare it to other beverages out there, which we're clearly competing against, I mean, we saw the beer industry do a great job with, I don't know, hazy triple IPA, pineapple, whatever, and it's not really my scene. But it shows us consumers want diversity in what they're drinking. Now, if they're a wine drinker and we can offer alternate varieties and keep them as wine drinkers, I think that's a good thing for an industry that is losing a bit of ground.
Yeah, I made a comparison in another episode around, we had craft beers and it feels like we're kind of doing these craft wines now, which is what people love.
Yeah, I sort of, I heard a comparison somewhere and it's where the last, where sort of the last crafts people left.
Yeah.
You know, you used to go down the high street and you had the shoemaker and the whatever. And here we are. Before we started, I jumped on the forklift and move a few barrels around, right? I mean, we are largely family-owned, small business, husband and wife, whatever teams. That's what our team is. And we get some grapes and we make a bespoke craft product, which we hope people want and pay for, you know?
Yeah, which not everyone can just grab any second at like a piece of bread. It's something special, something unique to you, which is great.
And we work hard to get it out there into retail, and we don't mind working with the big guys and all that. I think it's a really, really good way to spread the word of our brand. But it's never going to be this, you know, it's never going to be Yellowtail. That's for sure. And we don't care to make that.
Yeah. And you're doing this at Mercer Wines without having a vineyard, your own winery, your own land, or your own cellar door as well. How do you make all this happen?
Yeah, some really, really generous people and lots of friendships, I think. So, I mean, we touched on I didn't grow up in the wine game. And, you know, of course I come with some envy. I wish I had inherited
your great-grandfather was in the 1850s?
Yeah, of course, you know, but because I'm in it now, but we are, that could also be the poison chalice. Right, and particularly in agriculture. We're incredibly fortunate how nimble we can be in business. I've spent a career, 24 years, whatever I've been doing this for, and you build a lot of, maybe old school, but I still think you shake hands, you sit down with people and you do business, you know, and you're honest, you say what you're going to do. And over the years, that's what we've done. And so now when we step out on our own a few years back, we had those relationships and we've now built that to be maybe an important part of some people's businesses. But yeah, so how do we do it? Long-term relationships with people, and we make our wine out of somebody else's winery. We do it ourselves. We lease a piece of dirt inside somebody else's winery. Incredible generosity afforded to us, I think. So, but again, you do that over years and years of friendship. You know,
how do you find that balance? Because I always think that, I guess when you're picking grapes off the vines, it's very kind of time critical. Yeah. So they're probably picking around the same time that you need at the same time. Yeah. How do you find that balance?
They're bloody tough. There's 24 hours in a day, right? So look, I mean, it's just, but they're in the same battle with themselves, you know. And we've got a slot. We've got a slot here, right? We've got the press now. Okay, it is absolutely
good coordination. Is probably what it is.
The other part, we're working out of a winery was almost exclusively Hunter Valley anyway. So a lot of we've been strategic building a brand around New South Wales, our guardrails in New South Wales, and for a few reasons. My career is largely New South Wales. The Orange region's really important, hilltops, etc., down to Tumbarumba. These are, I built a career out of taking fruit out of Orange and making. My peers would see that, I think. So we sort of go to those regions. We get fruit and we make those wines. So largely where we're making wine has finished crushing grapes at that time when that orange fruit starts coming in. It's a bit later. It's higher altitude, etc. But it's tough. It's Tetris. I mean, but any winery is Tetris. It's incredibly a demanding time of the year, but fun. Yeah. I mean, it's when it's when it all happens, right?
Yeah. So. And then when you actually get through it, it's that kind of sense of relief.
Oh, yeah.
Are you through it now?
Beers. Yeah, we've got a few Malos ticking away and that's it. So we're mostly out the other side of vintage. We're through vintage, absolutely. Yeah. And you're through vintage the day my wife Alison, who An old staff member of ours once said, Aaron makes the wine, Alison does everything else. And I think that's true. I didn't like it at the time, but it's very true. So when Alison organises sales trips or whatever for me to do, we finish vintage. It's like she can start to see me being a bit more free, boom, out again, and doing whatever. So
it's a good family business, which is great. Right. I got to say, the Picpoul, since you mentioned it, I can't stop thinking about having an oyster with it. Right? I feel like there's a great saltiness in the finish.
It's a real saltiness to it. And with a hint of lemon, it still has a kind of acidity, but it has a tang rather than a zing. Right?
Yeah, I think saltiness is a great call. Interestingly, completely different wines, but the saline element to this reminds me of like Manzanilla or Sherry, which completely different wines, but the way that the wine makes you salivate is not related to sugar or anything like that, which can happen. It's related to the acidity and that lovely saline nature of the wine. So we love it. It has resonated well with our consumers, which is another more important.
That's a good thing.
I might say. Yeah. So we love that one.
So I do want to touch on sustainability, but before we jump into that, let's taste this one. Which, if you want to hold this up, the Vermentino, and we'll get it on the camera if you want to talk through the story of this.
Yeah, so Vermentino, it's quite funny. You just said you want to talk about sustainability. I think this is a good segue, an unplanned segue from us.
Yeah.
Vermentino, probably a Sardinian grape variety, but I think that's argued. This planting, is an Upper Hunter planting. It went on to some years ago, 12, 13 years ago, this was grafted onto some Chardonnay. Now, the vineyard is a really famous old vineyard called Roxburgh Vineyard. Rosemount Estate was famed wine company, and this was a really famous Chardonnay vineyard for them. And largely this property is still Chardonnay. But a small portion was put on to Vermentino, and immediately a viticultural success. It uses a lot less water and significantly more crop. There's acid retention. You can pick it a bit earlier. So all these wonderful viticultural elements. I say pick it a bit earlier. It still picks late, but it ripens a bit slower, I should say. But there was probably no market for Vermentino. What is Vermentino? And now there's a real thirst, probably spurred on by COVID, and drink local and experiment a bit more. So that's where, I see a lot of interesting alternates since then. Vermentino has really come along and is certainly our linchpin alternate grape variety for the whites. It would be Monty for the reds. So for me, what I love is that sort of changing of the guard. So that was what was in the Hunter. And here we are now with what is in the Hunter, off what was and has been a particularly iconic vineyard for the Hunter Valley. And we make it, there's about 10, 15% of that wine goes into some older barrels, really old barrels, 10-year-old barrels. We're only just trying to get a bit of contact with the yeast lees to give a bit of weight to this wine. Vermentino can be quite textural, and we're trying to show those characters, textural being a bit of phenolics and so forth. But we're also trying to make Aussie white wine, so this lovely freshness and aromatics that come with that. So that is a wine we love, and Alison, my wife's favourite wine. So
the bouquet is really nice. I love the smell of there's a fruitiness and there's a floral aspect to it.
Yeah, it has a kind of a broad acidity to it rather than linear. And I got kind of like white flowers, white peaches kind of coming through it. But they're delicious.
Yeah, so some of those phenolics, I think, it's interesting. I largely don't talk about flavours in wine. It's not really my thing. I think I look at the shape of a wine and how, so I'm probably trying to drive how a wine feels and how a wine enters your palate and so forth. So for me, I love that broad acidity that you bring up, and it enters the palate and you get some lovely phenolics on the side, and it almost pauses the wine as it comes through the mouth, making it last longer and so on. These real positive attributes about it.
It's almost like you always think length as in tannins, with this like length in acidity.
Yep.
Which I got.
I was curious why aren't you so why don't you like to talk about the flavors so much, or what is it about that as a winemaker?
You can't drive them as much as a winemaker.
The level of influence.
I don't mind talking about flavors. Sometimes I pick up particular wine writers, which I won't go into, and I don't actually know what they're telling me. Yeah. I genuinely don't, and I think they just make up a heap of words. I'm sure it's well thought out.
Yeah.
But often they're describing flavours. To me, the important another way of saying it would be we have different upbringings, right? And in your house as a child, you know this flavour, I know this flavour. And your brain has largely mapped that, not unlike vocabulary, right? Your brain has largely mapped those flavours for you. You say strawberry, I say raspberry.
Yeah.
Neither of us are wrong.
Yeah.
But if we're talking something tangible like acidity, it's actually there's receptors or it's a physical action like tannin. Yeah. Tannin is physical. It's binding the salivary protein. It's a simple concept. We can actually articulate that a lot better. So it's not just blasé dismissal of those terms, which it probably is these days, but it's off a good base of saying, well, actually I feel I can articulate and you can understand what I'm saying better if I'm talking about the feel and the line and the acidity, et cetera, where my strawberry and your raspberry we could be talking about the same thing. Now broadly, I mean, when I wine show judging or whatever, you've broadly got to talk about flavours in wine. There's blue fruits, there's dark fruits, et cetera, but that's about as narrow as I get. Yeah.
We've tried the Vermentino, but we're going to talk about all these emerging varietals. Is that a result of trying something different, or is it more around climate change?
I think as much as I'd like to say it's around climate change, it's about chasing the squirrel. Where's the market moving? And I do think it's about trying things new. I think it is about we're more global society these days, and plenty of these winemakers in Australia. They might be foreign or have travelled and worked overseas. So I think they bring things back, or this interest or whatever. So I would say it's largely commercially driven. But I think it has the benefit of being a real good climate initiative at least.
I was curious if that was the impact on sustainability, or is it also, at the end of the day, you're running a business and sustainability is important. So my question is the interest in sustainability, where did that come from? What does sustainability mean to you? Because I read your report on the Future Leaders program, and I have to be honest, I haven't thought about sustainability very much from a consumer perspective, but I'm keen to see your thoughts. What does it mean to you, and why are you interested in driving that?
Yeah, look, I said I went to university and I thought I was going to work in coal mines or something like that, but my first degree was environmental science, so it's not new to me. My interest in this area is not new. I guess when and I've been deep in what would be this sort of organic wine sector for a long time, and I thought it had a lot of shortcomings on actually what the outcomes we want. So I look at something like the work you're referencing was a thought leadership piece I did when I was part of the Future Leaders program. Wanted to investigate, what sustainability meant to our business, and we'd sort of tackled that prior to some extent. So for us, we want to see, I guess, where is the wine industry 20, 30 years from now? Where's it going? We've got the Sustainable Wine Growing Australia program. I look at that program versus, say, organic certification, where you might have to drive up and down a vineyard row 10 more times a season because you haven't got the systemic sprays. Is that actually a better farm practice? Organics would be concerned about what you put into your body. Sustainability is concerned about the treatment of people, your staff. It is concerned about the financial sustainability of your business, and of course the environment and largely climate change. Now, if I'm going to look at each of those, the organic principles would be the BB gun. Over here's the shotgun. This is what climate change is, a bloody serious topic that we need to grapple with, and we as a wine sector need to take that on. So for us, it's just asking questions within our business. I've sort of referenced it there earlier, but I really see these certification processes or programs as the start line. I think we can't get there and say, this is the end, we're now sustainably certified, here we are. We need to ask questions around what packaging are we using, and well before that, what grapes are going into the ground, what new plantings. Should we be growing as much? Should we be growing large quantities of grapes in irrigated areas where we can be growing food? Yeah. There's an enormous social license afforded to us in the wine sector, and we need to be respectful of that, I think. So
it's really interesting because as a consumer, I just linked sustainability to what you were saying is organics, like just the environmental side. But there's so much more. There's the business, there's the people, there's everything, the packaging that's going into it. So it seems like a very holistic approach. And I think your message seems to be, yes, that's the starting point, but also, is there really an end point? We've got to keep on going and trying to improve on that.
Yeah, and you know, the paper you're referring to, you know, I put forward the concept of that sort of continuous improvement model where we try something in our business, we reflect and learn, we change it, we go again, and I think that's particularly important in relation to sustainability. We go, okay, well, we did good there. We you know, as an example, we don't use paper in our labels. There's a sugarcane and hemp products, so we're not cutting down trees. Awesome. We could stop there. Yeah. But no, let's ask another question. What's our next question that we can move forward with? I think that is what sustainability ultimately is for us. We're probably beyond talking these days about you know, A, B, and C attribute, which applies. It's just what we do, and you keep asking questions, and you move ahead with it, and there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think similar to you, like, you know, there's all these different things that kind of pop into my head. You know, I think about kind of soil sustainability as well.
Absolutely.
Like making sure the soils last years and years.
And regenerative farming, etc. I mean, we are in a unique spot as a business, not having grapes, not having the winery, right? And we've worked with the winery we work out of to move to sustainable certification. All of our growers, in fact, through the Hilltops region, our two main growers in that region, haven't moved to sustainable certification. So we actually didn't take grapes from them this year. So you have to make decisions in your business. One variety is completely gone. Another variety we moved to another region, which we already work out of, because, you know, you kind of hold their hand and go, hey, and then you suggest a bit harder next year, and then you're still not coming along. And maybe we're not a big enough player, and that's okay. But us as a business need to make those decisions to move away from things that aren't aligned with where we're going. So that's what we do as a business.
Do you think they're quite linked though in terms of environmental sustainability and financial sustainability?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, go and change your lights over in your house to a more environmentally friendly method. You're going to save money. Yeah. It's all, you know, it's all pretty simple. It might be initial investment, but like, we'll have no choice. I mean, we have our major trade partners through Europe and Asia demanding that we have a lower carbon footprint. We have to play along. It is plain and simple. So I think at least I see a time 5 years from now where the major retailers, Coles and Woolworths, you won't be on a shelf unless you're sustainably certified. Now, that might be pie in the sky thinking, but I would welcome that.
It's good for the world. So, so why not? And so we might move to the Shiraz.
Yep.
We'll put this on the screen.
So Shiraz Nouveau, as we call it. So this is Hunter Valley Shiraz. Again, from the largely from the Upper Hunter, almost exclusively. And I put sort of the Vermentino and the Shiraz, the two wines I chose to pour today. They're both Upper Hunter wines because I think it largely represents a region that is overlooked in the scheme of the Hunter. We talk about the hugely premium wines of the Lower Hunter here, but the workhorse of the Upper Hunter that produces very good fruit. So this is a Shiraz Nouveau 2023, so, you know, pretty early release. We bottled this back in like August. Now, you guys, with all your like enormity of wine knowledge, you would know Beaujolais Nouveau. So Beaujolais wine region in France, and they had this Nouveau style, which is carbonic maceration and so on. We were doing that in the initial vintages, and we do a bit of whole bunch cluster sort of inclusion these days. But for us, we just interpret that Nouveau style to be early bottling, young, vibrant, fresh. This also won a trophy last year at the Hunter Valley Show. It won a trophy 3 years ago at the Hunter Valley Show, so 2 of the last 3 years. And we're incredibly stoked. I'm sort of bringing that up because this is this modern interpretation. It's not the age forever structured style of Hunter Shiraz. So it's really great to see wine shows awarding these types of wines.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we make this wine, we all hear about this is a great vintage, this is a good vintage. And I guess what people are referring to there are, this is an age-worthy vintage. And I get that, but not every good bottle of wine needs to age. So, and to an extent, when it's not an age-worthy vintage, people might walk away from vineyards because they're not going to be able to age that and sell it for lots of money. This style of wine we can produce every year. We can make this lovely, vibrant style. And we talk about sustainability. Picking the grapes every year is about as important as it gets. So all that effort isn't wasted. But this is a style of wine we're really proud of, and just bloody delicious. Hunter Valley Shiraz.
You mentioned Upper Hunter. I'm not too clear on like the different areas. What's the difference between upper and lower?
Yeah, it's a bit of a gap, I guess. So there's some sizable vineyards in the Upper Hunter around the township of Denman, I guess. Back in the day, that was the beating heart of Rosemount Estate and so forth. And so these days, now there's most celladors in the Hunter Valley, in the Lower Hunter here. They're everyday $25 Semillon or whatever would likely be sourced from the Upper Hunter. Yeah. Still the Hunter Valley. I shouldn't be. It's probably more that differentiation is probably more an in-house differentiation for our peers, our winemaking peers. For the public, it's all Hunter Valley, and your everyday drinking would be from those more. They tend to be more. They're not as fragmented as the vineyard sites down here in the Lower Hunter. They have a bit flatter terrain, so they can run more commercially set up vineyards and get efficiencies, cost efficiencies, etc. So,
is there a difference in soils and climate as well?
Yeah, definitely. Like we tend to be pretty susceptible to hailstorms and this and that down here, and they tend to avoid those. And I don't think I won't sort of take anyone down the garden path and say that we can get to the upper echelon of of wines necessarily out of those regions, but it's the workhorse of the Hunter Valley.
Understood.
I had to double take on the vintage year because it's not what I was expecting.
What vintage is it?
2023, right? And I was expecting just a big fruit flavor, maybe higher tannins, stronger tannins on it, but it's softer, and it's earthy, and it's gluggable. It's gluggable.
Yeah, So
it's
now you understand gluggable. It's look, the wine's been bottled a little while as a part of that, but look, I think, we know Shiraz as tannic and firm and so on. In the Hunter, we tend to get these earthy, more savoury characters to begin with. We really have to control those tannins through ferment. So not, ensuring we're not over extracting these tannins. That's where you get the tannins out of the grape. That's why you ferment red wine with its skins, because you're wanting to extract those tannins, but there's too much, too little. And that's a balancing act. Plus as much as we want this to be vibrant about the fruit, we still go into barrel for all of that. Actually, we want a foedera for a part of it, and then smaller oak. Oak has it's not new oak, none of that, but oak has an amazing ability at, it polymerizes a lot of those tannins, it softens the wine. Yeah. Often the addition of more tannins through oak can actually soften a wine, and that's what we see. That's what we see with aging wine in barrels for long periods of time. So it's a complex wine. You can't win a wine show, particularly something as prestigious as the Hunter Valley wine show, with a simple fruit bomb. They're still really quite complex wine. For me, it's just about getting layers of flavour in that wine. So,
but still very drinkable, which is a perfect combination.
And we this is our biggest selling red wine. Which is somewhat the average of Australia. Australians drink more Shiraz than anything else. So,
it's delicious.
You say it's complex, but it's also kind of drink now type of wine. It's not one that you would age, though.
No, I would not be scared to have that in my cellar for another 3 or 4 years. No worries. But we've got an upper echelon in our portfolio, our limited release range, and absolutely we're targeting the vineyards. We're really working those wines and in fact trying to extract more tannin at that early stage so that we can have a wine that has longevity now. Those wines are equally drinking now. I mean, I don't always subscribe to the idea that wines can't be good drinks, young and age. I think there's obviously you have fruit when they're young, and you have sort of complexity coming into those wines as they age, or more secondary characters. But at the same time, sort of fruit is declining. You're getting to a point where maybe the wine is getting a bit old. I'd much rather come around to your place for a drink of wine, a bottle of wine, and we go, oh shit, that's a good bottle of wine. That'd be nice now or in a couple of years. Than the other way around. Oh, that wine is a bit old, isn't it? We should have drunk that a few years ago. That's not what I want.
Got it.
So my bias is always for these more vibrant sort of wines.
Yeah, older isn't necessarily always better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Enjoy life now. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. So,
and I've got to say, we have the Australian wine consumer picks a bottle of wine up off the shelf and drinks it within that night. So we got to make them slurp today.
The first thing I noticed with this wine is just the color of it. Like the Shirazes are so kind of bright and vibrant. I picked up like kind of the more red fruits and the kind of darker fruits, like a classic kind of Barossa Shiraz. But even though it's not a fruit bomb, it is kind of more fruit forward. And you talk about barrel that was in both Foudres and also then New Oak, or
smaller format barrels. So.
But I don't really feel that kind of coming. It's kind of like it's not there.
Yeah. So I think for me, I think it's a great explanation. So I also think Shiraz typically, no matter where you have it, Shiraz is this big ball of fruit at the front of the palate and then flows through. And for me, what I see in this wine is I don't drink this all the time, but I just had it then. I love the sort of, I see the oak quite late on that palate as a lovely sort of almost drawing the fruit back through the palate versus some abrupt phenolics early in the wine. But it's just a bloody delicious Shiraz. It looks and tastes like Shiraz and the Hunter Valley savoury sort of characters.
And the tannins are very approachable now. It's like kind of subtle but kind of very scented on the palate. And it's not kind of bang across. Yeah. So...
It's like 2023.
It's gluggable, drinkable, so it's smashable.
Well, you're up for another 23.
Here we go. We got a Montepulciano. And if I can pronounce that right, I'd get it right one time.
So it is a Montepulciano. You've got to pretend you're Luigi and
say,
Montepulciano. Or Mario. Both very popular people at the moment. So in my house, at least with young kids.
Yes.
So Montepulciano, it is a workhorse of Italy, second only to Sangiovese for vineyard area. Largely doesn't get the sort of probably recognition that it should. Come to Australia, great wine companies down in McLaren Vale are doing some wonderful jobs. Other regions as well, wonderful jobs with Montepulciano. This has grown the same vineyard as the Picpoul. And when I viticulturally look at these things, and I'm no great viti person, but certainly I spend enough time in vineyards. And you're walking through and you're looking at a grape variety in mid-vintage like Montepulciano, which is planted or grafted onto vines adjacent to Shiraz, and you're seeing the Shiraz droop and so forth. And Monty's still just out and perky and handling the 42 degrees or whatever it is when you're walking through that vineyard. I sort of look at that and then just pure consistency. I mean, this wine for us, this is 23. You're the first people I've poured it for.
Thank you.
Well, we're pretty much out. Well, we're out of the 22 basically, still in Sydney market. But we've just seen 21, 22, 23, or 21, 22. Both won best Italian varietal. New South Wales. Halliday Companion has awarded them very highly, 95 points, etc. And then we look at that 23 and then 24, which I'm happy to show you in barrel. So we just got 4 years of that same vineyard, same site, and they just look great consistent and similar. And and we've had some largely different, really varied seasons as well.
Right
through that, so it's not. It hasn't been. We've had the cool years and the very hot years. So it's a great variety for the future, I think.
Great for business as well if we can handle the different variations of the seasons. Wow.
It's good because I actually don't. I mean, I sort of alluded to it earlier, but we have no aspiration to be yellowtail or great to those guys, good on them. But we I don't want to make Coca-Cola. I actually want our grape varieties, I don't mind saying, hey, this year was cool, this year was warm, because we're largely hand selling these wines. I mean, these are all about $30 retail, as it's worth pointing out. So they're not everyday drinks for most people, but they're not a stretch for most either. Anyone interested in wine can get these. But at that price point, I don't mind showing a bit of variation, but as a business, we still want consistency. We still want to be able to have something that we can push to the customer and say, this is delicious.
Absolutely. The first thing that stands out for me is actually the mouthfeel. It feels quite silky and creamy at the same time.
Yeah. I felt that it's kind of Chianti-esque in that I feel that it's very much a food wine, like a pizza or a steak. I put kind of cherry cola kind of good flavors to it. So that's that cola with the pizza type of thing that I get. But the tannin is definitely a lot bigger, and that's why it's more of a food wine compared to
it's great. I mean, I love your nuts, actually. They're very good. So for me, the Monty's always had more tannin, always carries more tannin, and it's our sort of the biggest in our portfolio, albeit pretty lightweight. New South Wales typically tend to be mid to light, midweight wines. But for me, that Monty, I sort of made reference early, poorly maybe when I spoke about my favourite wine, but those great food experiences are the carafes of wine in the centre of Italy. This is better in quality than that, but it's the same idea. It's homage to that. It's about drinking with food, and there's no surprise. This is probably it's behind the Shiraz, but that's a really large seller for us in Sydney on premise. You said in lots of restaurants, etc. It's delicious. I love it. And a bit more oak in that wine too. Intentional, somewhat to soften those tannins, but also to give a bit of longevity. We want, we're still on the 22, as I said, and we're moving into the 23. So this will be around for another 12, 18 months.
That's beautiful.
Aaron, we're very fortunate to be able to taste these, and everything has really been delicious. I think there's a couple of things that are coming to my mind before we wind it up, but was there any last messages that you wanted to share?
I just encourage the listeners. I mean, they'd be largely Australians who are listening to your podcast, and we have an incredibly diverse country, a wine country. Drink more Australian wine, and I would say drink more New South Wales wine. But I think you've tasted a few of our alternates, but there's so many great companies out there. When you're buying that glass of wine at that restaurant, make sure it's Australian, and support the local industry. You're not only supporting small businesses, small Australian businesses, but you're making a tick for the carbon footprint and everything else. But I think explore your backyard. There are some bloody delicious drinks here to get your hands on. So that's one message I'd love to get across.
I completely agree. And I was saying it earlier, I haven't been to Hunter Valley enough. And going through this tasting, I almost feel a bit ashamed in doing so because I feel like I've missed out on a lot. And I think I've got this impression of Hunter, just have the Shiraz, just have the Semillon. But you've opened up my eyes about the different emergent varietals to have and things to enjoy and things to drink now. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Aaron, for that. Trent?
Yeah, I think similarly, like after uni, we visited Hunter a couple of times and I think I got scared of this Hunter in terms of the wines I was tasting. And I haven't gone back since, and I'm kind of like lean towards kind of other areas of Australia, or other wines. And now it's kind of rediscovery around Hunter Valley wines.
Get up here. I mean, I think the cellar door experience that you're going to have today is vastly different from what you would have got. That more pompous setup that you got years ago. It's a really great region, casual, and we make bloody delicious wines.
I think pompous, and back in there, I feel like it's more kind of high alcohol wines.
Yeah, sure. And
that's what it was.
Meant to age and all of that, and that's confronting. When you're young, you can't afford it. You want to drink it today. You know, we now drink wines. We now make wines for current consumption, those sorts of things.
So it's great to see the Hunter has evolved from back then to now. So try Hunter Valley wines is probably my message.
Try Hunter wines, try Mercer wines. And I think one of the other reasons is you've recently been announced as a finalist for the Winemaker of the Year at the 2024 Hunter Valley Legends Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really great. I mean, there's some other wonderful candidates up who are absolutely amazing winemakers, good mates of mine as well. So you're always up against your mates, But I mean, look, we feel we make good wines and can sort of stand up alongside of them. But as well, it's certainly not in the bag. There's plenty of great people out there.
Sounds good.
I think you're going to do well based on what we've been trying. So, no, I really appreciate it. Aaron, thank you so much for your time here. Everyone listening and watching, come visit Mercer Wines in the Hunter Valley. Meet Aaron, meet Alison and the family. Great wines here to explore.
And visit the new cellar door, June.
Visit the new cellar door, June. Very exciting.
Yeah, jump on socials, find us. We're on there, etc. And thank you guys. I've really enjoyed this. It's been great.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And so, like we like to say here, drink more, try more, learn more. Thanks all.